What's up, No Nation? Pull up a chair, have a seat. I think it's about time that we have a little family discussion here. You know, Michael, they say winning cures everything. And man, when losing happens, people bring out the pitchforks. And
Yes,
it's
they
only been
do.
2 games, but I think it's more about how those 2 games have looked than anything. And I think people have the torches and the pitchforks out. And there's a lot of questions that are being asked about this program. There's a lot of animosity among the fan base. And I think that just the way it's looked has heightened things. So we still love Florida State. And this isn't meant to pile on this program or this coaching staff. But today, we're going to ask some important, some difficult questions about the direction and the future of this program. You know, I think when you look at it, we still support Florida State, obviously. We still like a lot of the people on this coaching staff. We still think they did a great job the last 2 years, and none of that should be ignored. But I think when you see things like this, it's time to ask some difficult questions. And there is a little bit of a risk factor for us because, you know, some certain people do listen to this and we don't want to just trash the program. But I think it's, you know, when you're an independent outlet, you have the freedom to ask some difficult questions. And so that's pretty much what we're going to do today. Now that is the last day of the bye week, depending on whenever you're watching this. So we're going to go big picture before we get into that Memphis game. So with that being said, Michael, I hope you enjoyed your vacation. Long ways away from Tallahassee. Welcome back to the pit of misery, my friend.
Oh, it's so good to be back. Yeah, I enjoyed my time in Montana. It was a great time for me to relax. And I was on a flight as Florida State was losing to Boston College. And so when I landed and got the score update, I talked to you a little bit on the phone just to make sure you didn't jump off the deep end. And
I thought about it.
you thought about it. Yeah, listen, it's been disappointing. The season has not been anything what anybody expected. Don't care who you are, not even the coaches, administration, media outlets, no one, not even us. We didn't expect this. And so yeah, it's disappointing for sure. And now, because of this, it requires us, as you said, to ask some really hard questions. And I just want everybody out there to hear before we get into this is, listen, we love this program. We would do almost anything, maybe except for, something against the law for this program. And so the questions we're going to ask today and the conversation we're going to have about this isn't because we hate this place, isn't because we hate Mike Norvell or anything. It's because, man, we just want the best. And sometimes in order to get the best, you gotta deal with the suck. You gotta ask it. You gotta dive into it. And so that's what we're going to do today.
Yeah, and I think that is a very important point that this comes from a place of love. Like it's, we were fans when Bobby was here. We were fans through the Jimbo era. We were fans through Willie, and now with Mike Norvell. Like coaches and administrators are going to come and go, but there's a lot of people that are generational fans, and that's where we're at. And so like we're only doing this because we love the program. I'm not one of those ones that asked for a refund on my Battle's End membership or anything like that. Like I'm still donating. I'm still going to do all that. I'm still planning on going to a couple more games this year.
Yeah.
So like I'm still going to go there. So that's just all it is, man. But before we jump into that, let's talk about let's just get caught up on a couple of current things before next week. As bad as it started, Michael, here comes the bye week. We're nice. We're safe. Everything's good. There's no way we can lose this. And then boom, 4-star defensive tackle out of the 2025 class, Myron Charles, flips to Texas. And it feels like we just lost the bye week. So maybe we're 0-3 right now already, which is tough. And I think obviously you have to look at, when you look at Charles, I believe he was like a Texas lean anyway. Texas has a ton of money. We don't know what they threw at him. But frankly, when you go 0-2 and you look bad against two middling ACC teams, Georgia Tech just lost to Syracuse. I know Boston College just beat the brakes off Duquesne, but it's Duquesne. And then you see them go out on national TV and embarrass the defending national champions. That's hard. That's a hard sell. It's hard to stop. So unfortunately, you do lose a recruit there. You're going to have to figure out how to pick yourself up.
Yeah.
And recruiting is going to be a really heavy. It's going to dominate the topic of this show. Is recruiting and what the staff has to do to get this back on track, because I've seen some of the replacement names, and you got some rising guys who are unranked, some 3 stars that are in there, some a couple of 4 stars to replace them with, but it's not, you lost a blue chip player already, and that's the problem that we have with recruiting. So unfortunately, you do lose one during the bye week, but stuff happens when you start 0-2, man.
It does. It really does. And this decommitment flip was, from what I've read, was already kind of in the works before, as they were coming into the fall preseason camp and stuff. There were already rumors out there saying that the flip to Texas was there was the chances were increasing. And then I just think the 0-2 start just really just solidified it. I think he was already headed that way, and then it just solidified it for him to be able to do that. And listen, as they say in recruiting, it's not done until you sign the dotted line. I believe FSU is still going to try to pursue him and see if they can get him back into the fold. But a big part of that will be what they can do with this season. That already feels, you're on the brink of something devastating. I'm not going to say they're there just yet, but they're on the brink, and we'll see what they're able to do with the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's like the lug nuts are off, but the wheels hadn't fallen off yet. You know what I mean? And you're hoping that they can get this fixed, because I think,
right.
we were talking about this before the show. The way things ended last year, you already kind of had that stigma that, oh, you're in the ACC and all that stuff.
Right.
You just needed to come out and like wash your hands of that last year and come out with fire and prove it. And this is the absolute worst case scenario that you could have started with. I mean, I predicted us to go 10-2 to begin with. So like, you could have sustained a few losses across the course of the season. You couldn't start like this.
No,
I mean, this was just, you were probably already getting negatively recruited for what happened last year.
That's right.
Between the snub and the Orange Bowl. And now you start 0-2, and it's like, man, so you got to pick yourself up off the mat. And I think as we get into the show, that's another reason why we talk a lot about the youth movement.
Yep.
I think there are some positions you could start working those guys in, but I still don't know that it's wholeheartedly time for a youth movement yet. I think there will be a time on the calendar that'll happen, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. I touched on a lot on that last episode, but I want to get into it now that Michael's back here. And I appreciate you being back, because my flow as a one-man show is just off, man. I haven't done that in a long time, but to touch on some other current news, Florida State during the bye week. And this is something I talked about with you guys last episode, where I said, look, I wouldn't even use the word Memphis this week. I think you need to fix yourself. There are so many. Last week I said effort and execution and alignment and assignment. There are so many basic fundamentals that you could fix that could get this team to a bowl level team. And I think that's how you stop the bleeding from a recruiting perspective, from momentum perspective. That's how you stop the bleeding, is to show that you can pick yourself up off the mat.
Yeah.
And so it's concerning, right, that you have to go back to a training camp mentality week 3 in year 5. That's a problem.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean that it doesn't have to happen, because you need to fix some things, right now. And I know that they've seen, I've seen some players with the tweets of all we got, all we need. So hopefully they're rallying around each other.
Yeah.
All they got was embarrassed, and all they need to do is start playing better. And so it shouldn't take 0-2 for you want to play hard. You know what I mean? That's the big concern for me. But you hope that they can rally around each other. You hope that they can fix some of these little, just piddly mistakes. And I know hope ain't a strategy, but
no, it's not.
Me and you talked about before this, where it's like, there are so many little things. I don't think this team's going to, obviously, you can probably flush the ACC title in the playoffs. That's fair. Yeah. But there's so many little tiny things that you can fix to get this team to win these games where it's close, to do things that they need to do. And, I just look at, when you look at Clemson, and I understand that it's App State and everybody wants to talk about how bad they are. I've seen people actually predict App State to be one of the G5 playoff contenders this year. Look at the way they responded. They lost to Georgia. They were embarrassed on national TV. They come back the next week, and it was like 58-10 at halftime. I mean, it was, you can't respond any better than that. And what did Florida State respond out of week 1? With a worse week 2. So I don't know, man. I don't know how much better it gets coming out of the bye week. I don't know how much you can fix, but you hope that this team, at least after 2 weeks of being embarrassed in a row, that they at least have the will to fight back and try and fix this thing. And you hope that camp mentality works out some of these little minuscule things. Because I've heard some other outlets say that this team plays faster in practice. Maybe they're feeling the pressure of trying to do too much in a game. And so hopefully that's what this week they've been able to focus on as we turn our attention to Memphis going into the next game. Because that's a game that you should win too.
Yes.
Should.
Yes.
Not will. Should, not will.
Yeah. Listen. Yes, it is interesting and maybe partly ridiculous that they're having to focus their entirety of their bye week on fundamentals. I will say to to that program's defense. They do fundamentals every bye week. So that this is something they've always done. They've always go back and try to like, okay, let's rep some fundamental stuff that we've seen the games before the bye week that we need to fix, right? But it's usually a correction, not a like we're basically redoing fall camp again, because that's what they're doing. They're basically redoing fall camp again. That's the ridiculous part of this. But again, you just hope that maybe a reset, maybe they go into this bye week, they do a reset, they kind of in some ways do a bridge version of fall camp where they're working on fundamentals, where they're working on simple communication. If I communicate this, you got to communicate this back to me. If I do this, you got to do this back to me. And they work on tackling, they work on this stuff. Maybe, hopefully, it will be a resetting of a mindset. Just having a week off to kind of flush the first 2 losses and say, okay, listen, let's just not focus on, like you said, whoever's in front of us. Let's just focus on us. Each and every week, we're just going to try to get better. And hopefully that getting better will result in wins. But, again, hope is not a strategy.
Yeah. And you got a lot to fix before next week. And Memphis is not a bad team. I mean,
No,
I know they it was Troy, but they just smoked Troy.
Yes,
so
they did.
You're going to have to come ready to play. And if you go 0-3 and you lose to Memphis, I mean, it's not going to look good. Cal is another team that's coming to town, and they just went to Jordan-Hare and upset Auburn. And so, again, the schedule is not getting any easier. I think that's the biggest problem. But leading into that, man, it's been an absolutely bonkers season so far. Like, it feels like 2007 all over again. Who knows? Like, Kansas will probably be in the playoffs or something like that. I think South Florida was up there, like that year. That was just crazy. And for me, like, as an FSU fan, like, I'm just glad we aren't the only ones suffering right now. I just want to like relish in everybody else's pain, and I just want chaos at this point. And I hope we can be a chaos agent at some point, particularly a certain game in South Florida. So I hope we just cause some chaos. But man, you look at Notre Dame just got beat by Northern Illinois, Oregon, which is, we thought in the offseason they had assembled a machine out there. Dan Lanning was doing great things. They're really struggling. Penn State just squeaked by Bowling Green. The defending national champion just got blown out at home. Bama struggled with South Florida. That was a 1-score game in the fourth quarter. And then you look at NC State. I mean, that was a ACC title dark horse, and they got beat by 41 as a 13.5-point favorite. So, man, this is a crazy season. That doesn't excuse Florida State by any means. But I do think that you are seeing the transfer portal. And we're going to talk about the transfer portal and all that stuff going forward, but you are starting to see some of that talent spread more evenly. So you're seeing some of these little teams be able to sneak up and compete with people. I mean, again, look at, Georgia Tech. Their quarterback was a transfer. Look at Boston College. Their quarterback was a transfer. So, like, you are seeing, I mean, of course, you still have the Georgias out there who are, that no one's catching them right now, and Ohio State's doing very well too. But, like, the competitiveness across the landscape of college football is actually getting a lot closer, and it's been a crazy, insane year. So, with that being said, you just don't know what's going to happen, and you hope that Florida State can pick themselves up off the mat and actually make the season respectable. So, man, but it's been a wild season. We are not the only ones suffering, so at least we can find joy in that. At least some other teams. Thank you, Notre Dame, for stealing the spotlight from us for at least a week.
Yes, for sure. And here's the thing. Listen, you're like you said, you're seeing the parity of college football in some ways this season. I watched the majority of that Notre Dame game against Northern Illinois, and man, the refs tried to find a way to screw Northern Illinois, but they were able to pull it out. And you just saw back-to-back weeks that, okay, you thought, okay, maybe Notre Dame just played a really tough Texas A&M team. No, their offense is, Riley Leonard is just as bad as when we talked about him at Duke. He's got great legs and a suspect arm, and it showed up again. So, man, you're looking at that Notre Dame game now like, maybe this is not as tough as we thought it was originally going to be. You saw Penn State almost lose to I can't even think of the team's name.
Bowling Green,
Bowling Green, almost lose to that. You saw other programs. Alabama, was a 1-score game going in the fourth quarter. Then they scored like, I don't know, 5 straight or something like that. To blow them out. So you're seeing this parity. I think outside of the top 3, Georgia, Texas, and Ohio State, I think everything else is going to be bunched up as you get more and more into the season. At least that's what 2 weeks through the season are proven. So now I think you're going to see more and more separation of that. Texas, I think they have another difficult game coming up this week against No, that's Michigan. Michigan's going to play USC. Gosh, that might be another blowout for Michigan. But yeah, so you're seeing the parity that's happening here. And again, I think it gives Florida State, if Florida State can figure out, man, what would it be like if anything? What would it be like if Florida State just went 10-0 after this?
I know.
I know it'd be crazy, but
that's the funny thing. We were actually talking about this yesterday. We were texting when we were watching football, and it was like, man, the worst part about us sucking this year is the fact that, like, outside of Miami, and to me, I mean, Miami looks good. I'll give them to that. Like, right now,
they look good. Yep.
When you look at every other team in the country, they look like a top 5 team right now. They look like one of the 5 best teams. They also played a really terrible Florida team that kind of struggled against Samford yesterday.
Correct.
And then they also played FAMU. And so, like, that, they were a 46.5-point favorite, and they won by like 47. So, like, they did exactly what they're supposed to in this game. So we'll see. And then, of course, Clemson bounced back. But it looks like outside of that, man, like, last year's team probably would have went 11-1, 12-0 again against this schedule. So that's the hard part. But yeah, I don't know that anybody should not have seen that Michigan-Texas outcome, because we talked about all offseason. Like, I know we got pissed when they said we didn't belong in the top 10, but we didn't think Michigan did either after all that they lost. So yeah, it's a wild year, man. I'm just along for the ride, and hopefully a lot of chaos. But that's the other thing. Like, you really hope that if Florida State can find something, just something, and you can just get some positive momentum going into the end of the season, that, like, there's not a lot of good teams. I mean, SMU just lost to BYU. So, like,
that's right.
You got some winnable games coming up here. And so, like, we'll see how things play out. But man, you just really hope they can pick themselves up off the mat. And so we're going to transition into the overall topic of this, and that's the turmoil in Tallahassee. But before we do that, Michael, there might be some suspect stuff with this team, but one thing that you never have to worry about is getting great FSU gear from Alumni Hall FSU. You know, there might not have been a whole lot of bright spots from my trip to Boston College, but I did get to go by Alumni Hall and check out their new location, man. They got all kinds of stuff that you love and that you want for this gear. Because, you know, if you're watching this, you're still supporting the team. So go check those guys out. 1415 Timberlane Road in Tallahassee, or shop online at alumnihall.com. Navigate over to the FSU page. Use code SPEAR to save 10%. If you're going to buy the gear, you might as well save some money. So we appreciate you guys supporting those that support us. So let's jump into this. You know, I think when you look at where this fan base is at, and it has been like, I almost went to like the costume store and bought like a gray beard and some gray hair. Something came on here like, man, I feel like I've aged 20 years in the last week of trying to have to talk about this. It's just a lack of results on the field. There's been, frankly, to call it like it is, a poor game day experience with some problems inside of Doak. And we knew that this was going to be a construction year and all that type of stuff. But there's more than that. With the whole Marching Chief stuff, so we're going to get into that too. It has really led to a lot of negativity amongst this fan base. And so I think right now you have to figure out how to fix this. And I think the biggest black eye on the season so far has not even like really been the 0-2. It's been when you find out that they would rather play kazoo music over through the loudspeakers, piped it in over the Marching Chiefs playing the war chant on third down. And that was requested by FSU football. Like, first off, who even approved that? To me, that is absolutely the most, to use a word that you like to use all the time, that's the most asinine thing that I've ever heard, man. Like, sometimes I worry, and if anyone wants to disagree with me on this, that's fine. But like, as a longtime FSU fan, sometimes I worry about if we're getting away from what made this program great. You know, I got to say, man, like at this last game, I wasn't counting because the news didn't come out until after I'd already left. I don't know that we did the war chant more than about 2 or 3 times the entire game. Now, granted, there wasn't a whole lot of reason to be doing it, but like, we did not do it a whole lot. And it just doesn't feel like it did back in the day, like back at that 2011 Oklahoma game and things like that, where it was one of the most intimidating atmospheres out there. There was scoreboard problems. There were time clock problems. There were signs hanging off. I mean, you had a whole offseason to be able to work some of these things out. I get you got the other half going on with this, you know, things like that. And I also understand that the stadium needed renovations, right? Let's not take that away. You had ADA compliance that you had to take care of. You had the underbelly of the stadium needs a lot of work. Like, it needs new bathrooms. You need concessions overhauled. You need, like, you shouldn't lean up against a piece of metal and it looks like, you know, I've been in a coal mine. Like, there's certain things that the underbelly of the stadium, frankly, needed.
Yeah.
But you consistently hear things about the concession stands running out of food. You know, you silence the Marching Chiefs and the Champions Club. I'm sure it's great for the people that are sitting inside watching the game. That has been an eyesore since the day it was open. It is never full. And now you're going to add these boxes down on the field and stuff like that. So I just worry that we're getting away from the things that made Florida State special. I understand there are things that you have to do to get people out of their house in the era of, YouTube TV and cheap HD TVs. I get that. But really, like, this fan base is primarily a blue collar fan base. You look at like the Bowden Society member, and I know that's different from the annual fund, and I'm sure we have a lot of big money boosters. There's, I think, about 350 people that belong to the Bowden Society, which is
Yep.
contributions over 50,000 over 5 years.
Yeah.
A lot of this fan base is, people like me and you, just the common fan, the common booster who gives what we can to this program. And I think you need to get back to focusing on catering to them and making the game day experience better. And because, again, like, I've seen a lot of people complain, man, I can listen to the Black Eyed Peas all I want in my car 364 days a year. When I go to a Florida State football game, I only get to hear the Marching Chiefs 6 to 7 times a year, and I want to hear them the whole time. This isn't the NFL. And so, like, those are the things. And thank goodness that this got enough traction that people up top heard us and that they promised to make it better. So we'll see how soon that happens. But, man, that is one of the things I think that has caused a lot of animosity amongst this fan base, where I've seen people saying, like, I don't know that I'm going to keep coming back. The whole renovation thing, you booted a lot of people that have been multi-generational season ticket holders. They got moved across the stadium. The people that sat behind me at this game said they'd had their seats for 21 years and they just got moved. So, like, man, there are some things that are happening off the field that I think are easily fixable, that we need to get back to as a program as a whole, and honoring those traditions and doing the things that make Tallahassee different than other stadiums. Because, again, man, we talk about all these traditions and how silly it is running down a hill, rubbing a rock and all that stuff. Like the war chant, Osceola and Renegade, those are special. Those need to be featured, where at least if the team's not playing well, you're having a great time on game day. I mean, look at 2011 Oklahoma. Again, we lost that game. It was one of the greatest atmospheres I've ever been a part of in a college football game. And so I think, I hope that the people in charge get back to the things that we as fans want. Because, again, man, like, I know, and I'll throw it back to you on this, but I know there's always been a thing of, like, we got to do things to get people out of the house. I get that. There's things that could be done to make the stadium better and the game day experience better. It's always been about the product on the field. I know we didn't have, I don't think it was any sellouts from 2015-ish when the Champions Club opened up until, I think, 2022. But they sold out 5 of 6 because we had the neutral site game. You sold out 5 of 6 home games last year, other than Southern Miss, and you've sold out every home game this year. All you got to do is put a good product on the field, and people are going to show up. Now, granted, that might say a lot about our fan base. You need to show up all the time, but Tallahassee's a hard place to get to. It's really expensive to go to with the hotels and stuff. So, like, man, it was never about suites and all these things. It was about just having a good product on the field and giving people that game day experience.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I don't know if you've heard this phrase that water will always find a crack, right? You can pour water out and it will always make its way to whatever crack is in the foundation. And so, when Florida State was winning, because last year, this was happening last year. I mean, you heard a little bit of complaining of, like, man, why don't they let the Chiefs play, the war chant more often? Why do we keep hearing the DJ, whatever? But it didn't matter because we were winning. So we were just having time. I went to every home game last year. It was awesome. It was great. The atmosphere was incredible. I mean, it was so much fun, and yeah, you're like, man, I wish, you could hear the war chant more or whatever, but you're like, whatever. But the moment they started losing, Jesse, boom. Now we're pitchforks. We're at Director Awful's door saying, "Hey, what's up? What's going on with the game day experience?" Now I get it. Like you said, the stadium needed to have a massive upgrade. It needed it so long. I mean, that stadium is still the original stadium that they put the brick facade around, right? So it needed some overhaul happening. I also understand why they're doing the suites and stuff. Yeah, listen, Tallahassee is, for me, it's 4 hours to get to. For a lot of people, the majority of FSU fans, while might live in Tallahassee, not all those people that live in Tallahassee go to the games. So a lot of the fans that are actually going to the games are coming from out of town, or driving from Georgia, or driving from, different parts of Florida, driving from Carolinas,
Yeah.
And so it is hard to get to. And so, yeah, there's especially in the days of YouTube TV and being able to watch it on 4K on your couch with your buddies around and stuff, and without having to pay thousands of dollars to get to. Yeah, of course. I can see why FSU is trying to make it more appealing to come to. But the thing is, you cannot lose what made this place amazing, what makes
Yeah.
Doak amazing. And one of the things that makes Doak amazing is the marching Chiefs. It's the fact that we get to hear the best damn band in the land, right?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody knows, like, it's Florida State and it's Ohio State, the two best bands in the country. Everybody knows the marching Chiefs. And so you cannot take that away from the fans. That ruins the game day experience. I mean, with the clock not working, with Doak looking the way it looks, I mean, we understood going this season it was going to be this thing. It's transition. Next year is going to look so much better. It's going to get back to that. But you got to make sure that in this season, where everything that could go wrong has go wrong, you try not to change too much, okay?
Right.
And so let's get back. Give the fans something to hold on to. One of them, as simple as it is, man, let the band play the war chant. Let us play it unlimited amount of times. That's one of the things that other opponents of other programs talk about. That, oh my gosh, we got to hear this war chant 1,010,000 times. Yes, let's do it 1,011,000 times.
Yeah, exactly.
If it's going to help, it's going to help.
Yeah, you can't run off fans from something that's not the product on the field, like something that's totally within your control. We understand a lot. I mean, there's a lot of those people that were mad that they lost their seats, but just the simple things, the simple things like having enough food in your concession stands, the simple things like not taking a whole quarter missing just to go take a bathroom break, letting the band play. Like, again, man, that's so crucial to the game day experience that regardless of the product on the field, you can't chase fans off over little things like that. And I think the DJ thing has gotten out of control. And I will say this, like, when I was at the ACC championship last year, man, the band was unchained. Like, they just keep playing. When I was at the national championship game, I sat next to an Auburn fan on the way home on the plane, and she's like, y'all play that damn war chant nonstop. And I'm like, yes, we do.
Yes, we do.
And so, again, like, I don't know if Michael Alford's watching this. We love what you're doing for this program. We understand why you're suing the ACC to get out, because revenue is of more importance than it ever has been. We understand that's why you're doing the all this suites and all that stuff to bring the big money boosters out. We get all that.
We get it.
But the thing is, we just ask that you don't lose sight of the traditions that made this program stand out from every other program in the country. And we ask that you don't lose sight of the common fan and what our game day experience is like too. I mean, I sat out in that Tallahassee heat all freaking day, tailgating to do the war chant like twice and then lose the game. Like, those are fixable things. So let's get that under control.
And let me say this real quick. Like, to the upper echelons of Florida State administration there. All you have to look at to understand how much we care about the tradition of our program is the fact that when you guys released the new uniforms, the reaction to that.
Yeah.
How crazy did we go
when
we saw the new uniforms? Because we wanted them to get back to what they used to be. Now, they're not back to what they were, but they're at least close enough and a lot better than the previous one. And so could you imagine, FSU administration, if you give us back the war chant on third down?
Yeah.
I know it sounds crazy, but that's all we're asking for.
No, I agree, man. It's just, like I said, man, as a longtime fan, it's like you look at, they changed the logo. And I don't hate the new logo. I like the old one better. You change the uniforms. You silence the war chant. You kind of start tearing up the stadium for things that don't look good on game day. I mean, again, that Champions Club, I'm sure it's great to watch games in the air conditioning, but it's an embarrassment because there's never everyone in the seats. Like, we're just getting away from what made this program so special under Bobby Bowden. And like, I think we need to get back to that. Maybe we need to hire like a tradition overseer to be part of the administration. I like fresh eyes and new blood in the administration to do these things, but like, maybe you need to have someone there to kind of keep a watch on that. So that was just one of the things that I felt like we needed to air out to begin with, because again, like, if the product on the field is not going to be great, you can't make the game day experience bad too, from a fan perspective.
Right.
And really, outside of like putting air conditioning in Doak and giving us Wi-Fi, I mean, at least give us the war chant. So
fake roof over the top would be
Right.
nice.
Like, man, I should have never went to that LSU game in 2022 because I'm spoiled after being in the Superdome. That air conditioning was a game changer. But so with that being said, with that grievance out of the way, because it's a big thing, man. Like again,
Yeah.
I go there because I want to. They were walking into the stadium, and I ran like a kid on Christmas halfway across the parking lot because I just wanted to go watch them walk into the stadium. So like when they get in there, man, let them do their thing. To me, outside of the team, the marching Chiefs are by far the most important
Yep.
part of game day.
I agree.
And doing the war chant is a big part of that. So
yeah.
the next thing we're going to talk about here is just like the 2025 outlook, because let's just assume the season is not going to go the way that you want. And it already hasn't. That's fair to say. We don't know how the season's going to end up. Maybe they get better. Maybe they make a bowl. Maybe they continue to flounder and they win 2 to 4 games. Right now, I don't know that either one of us would pick them to win more than 2 to 4 games when you look at how bad things have gotten, because I think we're all as a fan base collectively in a show me mode. Like, you still got talent. This staff still won 23 games over the last 2 years, but I need to see it. I got to see you actually pick yourself up off the mat and fix some things. And so, like, if they were hired, if they said, Jesse and Michael, you are now the general managers of Florida State, you get to make the decisions, how would you go about avoiding some of the ways that we saw the last coaching tenures go, where like you kind of wandered off into the abyss for a little while? And, you know, once you lose momentum, man, momentum's a big thing among a program. Like the way last year ended, you put together a stinker of a year this year. You got Alabama game 1 next year. Like you could certainly get a kick in the teeth for momentum coming into your 2025 season. How do we avoid that? How do we bounce back? And what are some of the tough questions that need to be asked about some possible changes that need to be made after this season? And I really think, again, like I have to get this in first. I understand it's a different time. We have the transfer portal, you have NIL, you have all these different things in college football. This is not Bobby Bowden's college football. This is not Jimbo Fisher's college football. It's totally different. I understand that. This staff has challenges. You know, again, man, at least when the Bobby to Jimbo transition happened, you weren't Willie Taggart bad, right? And so you still had some things to build off of there. So I understand this staff had to take a little bit of a different path to get this program back to where it needs to be. And they did a very good job of that. But how do you avoid that going forward? And I think really, to me, it comes down to, with all those things said, you have to ask yourself, do you want to be elite? Do you want to be the Florida State that we've known, where championships are the standard? You know, I touched on this last episode. Winning 10 games is fun. It's not the standard. You know, making a bowl game is not the standard. This isn't Arizona State. This isn't Mississippi State. All these things. This program is mad. Like, we're pissed when we win 10 games and don't make a championship. So, like, you have to ask yourself, how elite do you want to be? And I think one that falls on the onus of the staff and Mike Norvell, it's going to fall at his feet. He's going to have to answer some tough questions, ask some tough questions at the end of the season. Is loyalty, which is good. I love loyalty. I mean, look at Mickey Andrews and Bobby Bowden. That was loyal to the end. Bobby Bowden was loyal. This was not his dream job. It was Alabama. He had plenty of opportunities to leave and he stayed. So don't get it twisted. That loyalty is a great thing. I think staff continuity is a great thing. Do you want to be elite? Because what you're doing right now is working, but it's not. And I'm gonna get into that more later. But that also falls on us as a fan base too, right? We know Florida State has been really good for a long time at doing more with less. We're a young university. We don't have a big alumni base. We don't have a gigantic booster base. You can't lose 2 games and be trying to get refunds from the NIL collective. You can't. Like, you have to. What did Bobby Bowden say in that video from 1978 or whatever? Like, when the times get tough, you can't quit. It takes all of us. So, like, we have to own up to this too. But there's also some tough questions that have to be asked when you look at this staff and their methodology going forward. I mean, again, like, I hate to throw this out there because to me, and it's so ridiculous when people say they get credit for Jordan Travis, right? One staff wouldn't let him throw the ball. He almost wanted to quit. They developed him. But the facts of the matter are, and it's more than just Jordan Travis, you're 29-8 with Jordan Travis. You're 2-10 without him. So I think him, along with a lot of other NFL talent, covered up some things with this staff and this program that are going to have to be changed going forward. Now, before we jump into that, when you look at 2025 and you look at the schedule, you have Bama coming in week 1. So you better take a big step because you don't want to get smoked by Bama game 1 and lose that momentum already. But you have 6 games on the schedule when I went through and looked at it. And just to run them off real quick, you got Bama, A&M Commerce. I don't even know what that is. Kent State, Pitt, Virginia Tech, Wake, Miami. Those are your home games. You go on the road to Clemson, NC State, UVA, Stanford, and Florida. You got 6 games right there that you should absolutely, without a doubt, win. There's about 4 coin flips in there, and then 2 probable losses when you look at Bama and at Clemson. Those are just the tough ones. Clemson, again, is a different program at home versus on the road. That doesn't mean you can't still win these games. So, you should have a bounce-back season next year. I'm not saying you're going to go undefeated, but you should probably go 9-3, 10-2 next year, even knowing that you have some pieces you have to reset. So, again, like I said, man, what are we going to be able to do to fix that? And how did we even get here in the first place? Is it the snub hangover? Is it the Orange Bowl thing where some players, this is a hard conversation to have, man. I understand that Mike Norvell probably talked a lot of those guys out of playing in that game. You had some guys who were injured that you probably should have talked out of being in that game because that 10 NFL draft picks did a lot for your recruiting this offseason because it was like, okay, well, what's the one thing the staff has never had? And that's a lot of NFL draft picks besides the title, which, again, they could have won, but it was out of their control. Man, the way things have went since, I think, pretty much almost erased a lot of that. Now, there's still guys. You've only lost 1 commitment, so I don't want to quite full on say that yet, but you've lost a lot of your goodwill from that last season. And so, I think, man, maybe you should have tried to talk a few more of those guys into playing. I think maybe that just hurt your image. And I just think it may have broke Mike Norvell, but you just hope that he can rebound and you hope that this program can get better. But I think the way last year ended and the way this year ended, man, you have to ask those tough questions so this doesn't happen again.
Yeah, I think when you look at the 2025 outlook, yeah, I mean, listen, you got Bama to open the season. And so your hope is that you're able to finish this year decently. It'd be great if they could make a bowl game so that they could use those extra 14 to 17 practices, whatever they are, to really kind of also help progress their younger people. But I think part of this, if you're going to look at the 2025 season and you're going to look at why are we here today? How did we get here? I think you got to go back to the snub. Okay. You have to go back to the snub. And there's so many things that kind of transpired after that snub. The coaching staff were supposed to be on the road. Some of the coaching staff actually stayed in Charlotte so they could take different flights out to get on the road to recruit. Mike Norvell had an immediate plane that he needed to jump on to go recruit because they all assumed they were in the playoff. Right. I mean, you saw the shock on Norvell's face when they didn't get in, right? They broadcasted it all over ESPN. And then they were trying to from what we've read and heard, they were trying to have conversations with players on the phone and all like that stuff. I don't know if I necessarily agree with your take that he talked. I'm sure he probably told the ones that were injured, hey, you shouldn't play this. I actually think, and I don't have much evidence of this, but I actually think he tried to convince every player that could play to play in that game in Orange Bowl. But I also think he probably understood why they weren't going to play. I'm not, listen, I love Florida State. I love them to death. Okay. And if I was good enough to be at Florida State and to play college football at Florida State, I totally understand why those players at that time decided, you know what? The College Football Invitational Committee just told me everything I did this year was worthless. And that my team is not good enough to be in a playoff game. I mean, Keon Coleman said this during an interview with the Buffalo Bills, where he said, had Georgia played us in a real game, like in the real game that mattered, they would have saw something different. Now, I don't know. He's just being Keon, but he goes, but they had to go and lose. So technically it's Georgia's fault why Georgia wasn't in the playoff and why we weren't in the playoff. Maybe he's got a point there, right? So my point is this. I totally understand why those players decided not to play. Did it hurt FSU to get whooped, to get mollywopped 63-3? Absolutely it did. Yeah. I think that's a jar and butt whooping, right? And then you go into the offseason and you think you have all this momentum because the program got better. The program did all this. You're gaining all this stuff. But that snub did more damage than what we thought at the time. We thought, all the transfer portal people are going to want to come and play. Well, what the snub did is that it took the NIL market and it just launched it. If you were going to get players to come to FSU, you're going to have to pay more than what
Yeah.
the market value was for them. And there were so many players that FSU was in on, but it came to NIL. And FSU at the time, remember, the FSU sources out there, the people out there are saying that FSU probably had maybe a $1 to $2.5 million less of a budget last year before Mike Norvell's contract negotiation that got him a bigger NIL budget than he did this year. So they only had a limited amount of money to work with, and they couldn't pay everybody. Then you think about the part between Cam Ward and DJU, and Cam Ward was asking for, $1.3 million. DJU at the time, according to sources, was only asking for $400,000 to $600,000. But then Cam Ward kept flirting with the NFL, wouldn't give anybody a timeline. Every source indicated that Cam Ward wanted to come to Florida State, but he also wanted to work with the money or the NFL. So when Florida State finally got into December 31st, I marked it down here, December 31st, FSU told Cam Ward, hey, we got to move on because we can't recruit anybody else until we know what our quarterback situation is. So the next day, what happens? FSU signs DJ. Cam Ward declares for the NFL. Miami comes back to Cam Ward, gives him double the offer or whatever it is, 1.5, whatever it is, and he goes to Miami. Rest is history, right? DJ actually only signed for $900,000. So, and then here's another part of that. On January 11th, FSU gets a notice of punishment from the NCAA, basically saying they can't recruit at the start of the spring practice, right? So now FSU misses out on the best of the portal players after the spring practice because they can't recruit the first week. Yeah. They can't talk to anybody. So there's so many things that kind of led up to this moment of where we are now. Did FSU also have to settle for some players in the portal this year because either other portal players were way too expensive or they just couldn't get them because of the whole perception of FSU after the snub? Absolutely. Did they also misevaluate some of the talent they pulled in from Bama and Georgia like we thought? Absolutely, for sure. And so I just think that as you're looking towards 2025, one of the things that you have to do, and I know we're talking about this, is you've got to reevaluate exactly how you evaluate portal players.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I hate to say this because it breaks my heart because, like you said, we both give to the battle's end. We both boosters. You might have to look at your philosophy about how you pay certain positions. And maybe certain positions, you're just going to have to cough up the money, even if you're like, this hurts.
Yeah.
As you're seeing right now, it's hurting.
Yeah. And that was something that I even said on like the last show was where it's like, and I was telling you this, I get that in the offseason that where it's like, okay, well, maybe you don't want to pay Cam Ward whatever he got, but it's also like the excitement that he would have provided by you ponying up that cash would have got you more donations, whereas DJ has people asking for refunds. So sometimes you have to be willing at a position like quarterback. Maybe you just got to pay. Maybe you got to start dumping some money into these high school recruits. That I think may be part of the strategy too going forward because, and we're going to get into recruiting in a second, but I think, like you said, man, I think the snub did more damage than we thought. Right. And before, people talk about the culture, stuff like that. Georgia had players out, the last bowl they played in, that was a non-playoff game and whatever. So there's a lot of people that go out. I just thought it was a bad look for those players. Regardless, hey, look, man, if I had first round draft pick money to play in a meaningless game, I probably would have sat out too. But I thought it sucked for them to sit there and let Mike Norvell take that beating by himself.
Yeah.
And so that's what I didn't like about that. But I think, looking forward to the transfer portal thing, like, again, I think you have to do a better job of evaluating some of these guys going forward. And I like some of the pieces that we took. Maybe we see that they're not panning out now. Maybe we see why they weren't starters at their programs. Maybe you could have saved some money from bringing in Roydell Williams when you had a loaded backfield to begin with. Maybe you didn't need to make that addition just because you could. I think, like, I understand, again, it's hard to say this because we have revisionist history that we didn't have during the offseason. But I think you look at like the good teams that compete for championships consistently, they're built through the high school and then they take a couple of players here and there. But like they're taking, Georgia took Florida's best running back, Trevor Etienne. Bama took Georgia Tech's running back a few years ago, Jahmyr Gibbs, the best running back that they had. We're here kind of taking scraps on occasion, you know what I mean? And to get where you are now, you had to do that.
Right.
But to me, like coming off of a of a 13-1 season, unfortunately, it ended the way that it did. You should have been able to go take some bigger pieces out of the portal than maybe some of the ones that you did. Now, when you look at a guy like Earl Little, that's a multi-year guy that you can develop over years. I totally understand that. But again, some of these I just now, and again, I know we get that history that the benefit of the doubt that they didn't have then. But I think they have to evaluate their strategy. And I think a lot of it has to be the onus on going heavy on high school recruiting. I think you have to. Now, again, like I said, there's no reason that you can't accent your roster with transfers, because you're still going to have to do. We're going to need transfers next year. It is what it is, man. It is what it is, because the portal giveth and taketh away. These guys can leave too. So there are going to be times where you just have to fill more spots than you can bring in with high school, or maybe you don't want to put a high school freshman out there. And it can still be tough, man. Like the DJ thing, we did not think he was going to be this bad. I don't think anybody thought that. I don't know who agreed to pay him $900,000, but maybe that's a misstep in its own right when you look at what he did before. But either way, like, stacked talent doesn't always equal wins. You still have to develop and use it correctly. And quarterback is one that people get wrong a lot. I mean, you look at, talking about Georgia, you look back when they had, there was a time where they had Justin Fields, Jacob Eason, and Jake Fromm, 3 5-stars, right? And so then who is the one that ended up winning them 2 national championships? It was a 3-star walk-on, Stetson Bennett. So, like, some of the best programs get it wrong all the time, especially the quarterback position. But I will say, I think one of the areas that Florida State, and we're going to talk about this in just a second, but one of the areas that Florida State really has to reevaluate its strategy, and it's the people in charge of that strategy, is in the trenches, right? You can get away with getting, we got Keon, we got Johnny, we got Trey from the portal and all that type of stuff. The trenches, that's different, man. You have to go get high-level guys out of high school and develop them. It is what it is, because when you look at, like, Clemson's rise to fame, a lot of that was talent in the trenches. I mean, Kelly Bryant led them to the playoffs at quarterback because of how loaded they were. That's right. The same quarterback that we're ready to throw to the curb right now, I know he got benched, but he led them in a way to an ACC championship. So you can get away with a lot, but you can't get away with it in the trenches. I mean, even Alabama, like, Mac Jones won a national title, and he looks like a 40-year-old with 3 kids that drives a minivan. You know what I'm saying? Like, physically, I look like Mac Jones. So, like, you have all of those things, man. But again, like I said, you still have to be able to evaluate and develop, because, again, like, Jordan is a much better quarterback than DJU, and he's a top 250 recruit all time. And so, like, man, you just have to, I think you have to focus more on high school recruiting, period. I think for a couple of reasons. That's more time to develop. You also have to me, it's a little bit better culture. And I touched on this in the last episode, where it's like, man, some of our best players have been transfers. Like, but you look at Jermaine Johnson and Kier Thomas and Jamie Robinson, they walked into a crappy situation. They knew what they were getting into. When you have guys that are trying to squeeze you for money after a 13-1 season, I think but the problem is, you can't even blame it on transfers, because a lot of those guys were high school. I think Jackson was the only one who was the transfer that was trying to squeeze you for money. Now, maybe you let some of those guys walk, but, like, that, man, it's so hard. But I do think when you look at the high school versus the portal, and again, we've been big fans of the portal. I like the fact that he kind of, like, manages like an NFL roster. But I will say that I think one of the missteps that they have with doing this, we always talk about this. It's his job to bring in the best player at the position, but at some point, you got to stop bringing in portal players to play over your high school talent. You got to. I've heard rumors. I can't confirm or deny this, but I've heard rumors that some of the players' families don't like it. Like, you brought my kid here to play. Let him play. Is he worse than what we see on the field right now? We don't know that. But we never get a chance to see. And so, like, I think, and at the end of the day, teams who consistently compete for championships are built primarily from elite high school recruiting. That doesn't mean you can't accent your roster with transfers. Transfers got us to 23-4. I get all that. We'll need more next year. But you can't build your foundation from the portal. And so, I mean, again, like, you look at Ole Miss, they went heavy in the portal. They're doing great this year. We'll see if it pays off. But no transfer-heavy team has won a title yet. Now, on the flip side of that, Clemson doesn't even know the portal exists. And yet they are in a consistent downtrend with a top 5 roster every year. So you need both. You have to have both. And so, man, it's just like, I think they need to put the onus on high school recruiting, the focus on high school recruiting, and take transfers as needed. And I think you also, again, you have to look at like, man, you're Florida State, right? You're coming off a 23-4 in the last 2 years. The recruiting's got to get better because it's not good enough. And I'll kick you for some thoughts on what I just was saying there. And then I got some numbers that are going to back up what I'm saying. But like, man, I think we have the focus. What you did to get here was fine, but going forward, now that we have revisionist history and all that stuff, that's great. You got to change your focus a little bit. It's got to be built from high school, accented by the portal, not the other way around.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with you on that. I do think our high school recruiting has to get better for sure. I really do. But then again, I also say, look at Ohio State. Okay, let's just use them as an example. I mean, they routinely have top 3 classes every single year. And the last time they won a national title was in 2014, right? Yes, no transfer portal heavy school has won a national title, but the transfer portal has only been viable for, like, the way it is currently right now. The transfer portal has only been viable for what, 4 years now that it's been like this. So again, there's not enough data points to really say, well, a transfer portal heavy team can't win a national title. We just haven't seen it yet. We don't have enough data points. Now, yes, Georgia and take that back. Michigan, not a transfer portal heavy team, but a transfer portal used a lot of it. Now, they did win the title, but a lot of their players are high school recruits as well too. So you're looking at these schools that are far and ahead away from everybody else, right? You're far and ahead away from Georgia, Alabama with Nick Saban, now Texas, and Ohio State. Those are 4 programs that are far and away than anybody else in the recruiting landscape right now. They're recruiting like wild. I mean, you'd put Miami up there, but they haven't won much. Miami, I'm not making fun of you. I'm just saying you haven't won much, right? Okay. But you'd put Miami up there too as well, as far as like they're just recruiting like crazy. Okay. I get it. They're so far apart from everybody else. Now, Florida State, we were already, 10 steps behind when Mike Norvell stepped into play, and he's been trying to play catch up ever since. And thank goodness for the portal, because you imagine if we didn't have the portal, where we'd be right now, he'd probably been fired already.
Yeah, we wouldn't have been 23-4. We'd be looking at coach change.
So don't hear us say the portal is this terrible thing and this bad thing. And listen, FSU fans out there who are saying, well, the portal, no, it's not. It's not trash. Every coach, even Nick Saban, had off years of recruiting where he might have got a top 5 recruiting class, and half of them were. I mean, just look at Bryce Young in the NFL right now, right? He's being labeled a bust.
Yeah.
You think Nick Saban's a bad coach because he had Bryce Young as a quarterback when the guy won a Heisman in college? My point is, every coach will have a bad evaluation season for sure. And this was Mike Norvell and this coaching staff's bad evaluation season. With that being said, though, we've got to get better at high school recruiting. And that's on Mike to fix. And the easiest fix, and I know we're going to get into this at some point, the easiest fix is to replace those who are recruiting high school kids. Just saying.
Yeah,
I'll throw that back to you on that.
And that's what we're going to get into now. And I think when you, again, and just let me share these numbers with you so far. So in the playoff era, which is 10 years, every national champion in the playoff era has not had a single class ranked outside the top 20 in the 4 years leading up to their title season. Only Clemson in 16 and 18, who again was kind of one of those, like, you don't feel like they were the dominant teams that won the title. And then Michigan, that's 2 out of 10 years, had a class. Only those teams had a class ranked outside of the top 15 in those 4 years leading up there. Every other class was in the top 15. Every single team that's won a title in the playoff era has had at least one top 10 class in those 4 years leading up to the title. 7 of those had a top 5 class. If you want to go back 11 years and look at Florida State, now granted the portal wasn't around back then, in 2013, the classes leading up to the title were 8, 2, 4, and 11. So like the numbers tell you, the teams who have won titles over the last decade since the playoffs have begun, you got to be in the top 20. You need to be in the top 15. And every now and then you got to poke your head into that top 10 type of recruiting class if you want to win a national title. Now, like you said, the portal hasn't been around a long time, but it's been around probably long enough that you still see that the teams that are winning consistently are still built out of high school. And so you have to get better at that. And then when you look at Mike Norvell, and I give him a break on the first couple of classes, but it's been 23rd, 20th, 19th, 12th, 18th, and 21 now that you just lost Myron Charles. So you've had one top 15 class and two outside of the top 20. So, or three outside of the top 20. I get 2020. I give him a pass for that because of all the situation there. And then 2021 was tough too. But you got to get better at high school recruiting. Now, since the portal era began in 2018, only one team, Michigan, took more than 4 transfers in each one of their 2 seasons prior to the title. That actually, every other team was 4 transfers or less in each year. Michigan took 9 the year they won the title. But they're also the only other team that had more than 2 of those guys start. Almost every other team that's won a title had transfers come in. They didn't make a big difference, more than 1, maybe 2 guys. Michigan had 4 guys who started or were significant contributors. When you look at Florida State in 2023, 16 of your starters were transfers. 14 guys on that team played over 300 snaps. That's about a third of the snaps that you played all season. 11 of those guys were transfers on offense. On defense, 17 guys played over 300 snaps. 8 of those were transfers. So again, like you have to get Mike Norvell said that he liked to study Georgia and Alabama and all these teams that won national titles on how they rotate and how they manage their line of scrimmage and things like that. If you want to study this, the proof is in the numbers. The numbers say that you have to rely heavily on high school recruiting. And like you said, that could change when a portal team finally does it. And of course, you have the examples of like Joe Burrow was a transfer. Michael Penix was a transfer. So you can have a transfer here or there that can make a big impact. But again, I think you look at those numbers, you got to be recruiting at a top 10 level if you're going to win a championship. Because again, you can make the playoffs, that's great. But all those teams that have been recruiting at that level, they're still out there waiting for you. And so now we're going to talk about, like you said, man, things that we think need to be looked at going into this offseason. Because like you said, the easiest way to fix recruiting is by the recruiters on your staff. That's just the way it works. And so I think one of the tough questions that you have to ask, and please, like if you're listening to this and you're a coach of Florida State, just realize you do a great job coaching. Maybe you don't do a good enough job recruiting. And so things have to get better. And I'm sorry, it comes out of a place of love, but the numbers are the truth. And so when you look at Atkins, and I'm a big Alex Atkins fan, but right now I think it's TBD. Like if he comes back, he's on a suspension. If he comes back and things look miraculous, give the man a raise. If things come back and they don't look great, I don't know, man. You got to start looking at everything. You got to ask when you look like you do this year, you have to start examining every piece that could lead to improvement, right? We say DJ doesn't look good. You need to replace him. That goes for everything. Everybody gets to be put under a microscope. I also want to couch with Alex Atkins. I understand where the O-line was at before he got here. It was an abject failure for year over year over year. This is not to knock on him as a person. We're just putting everybody under the spotlight right now. So let's look through the history real quick. 2020, Robert Scott. Good multi-year starter. Probably not great, right? We just said we didn't think he was great in one of the last episodes. Thomas Schrader, 3 years, 1 start, never more than 50 snaps, dealt with a lot of injuries, transferred to App State. Lloyd Willis, 3 years, 0 starts, never played more than 41 snaps, transferred to Marshall. Devontae Love Taylor, serviceable guy when you needed him, played almost over 1,200 snaps prior to FSU. You got to also look at we think they develop talent well, but if a guy's was a multi-year starter at another program, maybe you're tweaking things, but I don't know that you're full on developing them. 2021, Rod Orr, 0 snaps, never played for Florida State. He's gone. Bryson Estes, 4 years, 0 starts, 171 snaps. Also a guy that's dealt with injury. Dylan Gibbons, you brought him in from the portal. Best starter they've had, 3 years at Notre Dame prior to Florida State. 2022, the big class. Jalen Early, year 3, hasn't played a lot, but he looks promising. Armella, year 3, can't crack the 2 deep. Quayshawn Sapp, 2 years, 6 snaps, transferred. Daughtry Richardson, 2 years, 14 snaps, transferred. And Tavius Woody, never played a snap, transferred the first year. Kanaya Charlton, 11 snaps, no longer on the roster. I don't even think he plays football anymore. You bring in Justin Turnantine as a transfer. Decent starter, not great, not bad. Played 2 years at South Carolina, 1 year as a starter. Dimitri Emmanuel, he was good. He was an Alex Atkins guy at Charlotte, played 3 years there. Caden Lyles, injuries, never saw the field. That's not his fault. Bless Harris just pretty good, not great. Dealt with some injury there. And then like, I don't want to talk about the 2023 guys yet, because again, Lucas Simmons is a very high ceiling type of guy, who just hadn't played American football a lot, so you have to look at that too. They like Andrew Otto. He actually is getting in the rotation this year a little bit. And then Keandre Jones, decent starter. I like Keandre, multi-year starter at Auburn. He had already had a lot of experience. Jeremiah Byers, pretty decent guy for you. Came in with 4 years of experience, all conference player at the G5 level. Casey Roddick, not great. Came from Colorado, 4 years, multi-year starter there. So, like, I just look, man, and now he did bring in Richie Leonard, pretty good. 3 years at UF, 1 year as a starter. Brought in Jacob Rizzi. We know he's got another year of eligibility. Didn't really expect him to do a whole lot this year. TJ Ferguson, jury's still out on whether that's going to be worth your take or not. So my thing is, you look at all these veteran guys. How come none of them have had NFL aspirations yet? You look at the younger guys. How come none of these guys have panned out? Not a single one of them have panned out yet. You look at the rush yards. You can even skip 2020 if you want, because we were 31st in rush yards, but all we could do was run. 2021, 52nd in rushing yards per game. 2022, 14th. That was a great year. 2023, you're 77th in rush yards per game, the worst in Mike Norvell's career as an offensive coordinator or coach. Offensive line got absolutely dominated in the ACC championship game, because I went back and watched it the other day to see what Brock Glenn would even do. My goodness, I'm glad he survived that game. 53.6% pressure rate in that game. You allowed 41.4% in the bowl. Remember, you had most of your offensive line. That was like the one set of starters that you did have in the bowl game. You gave up 34.5% pressure rate against Florida, who was 101st in sacks. Your rush yards without Jordan Travis, 90 yards, 165 yards in the ACC title game, 73 that came on one play, and then 63 against Georgia. So far in 2014, you're 118th in rushing yards per game with 59.5. And I mean, again, like, you look at the quarterback pressures, that's not Jordan Travis. Chuba in 2020 was 41.8. Blackman was 38.9. Jordan Travis was 40.2, 39.9, 31.2, 27.7. So it got better every year. I'll give him that. Jordan Travis also got better as quarterback. Tate in 2022 had a 55.3% pressure rate, 36.5 in 2023. Brock so far has had a 47.7% rate. And then, I mean, like, it's too early to say with DJU, but, your tackle got whipped in that game. So, again, man, I love Alex Atkins as a coach, but you have to look at the results and start asking the tough questions. How come it's not – the recruiting has been great, but it's not translated to the field. And that's the concern that I have, because like we talked about, man, again, the trenches are a place you cannot miss. You look at the Georgia TCU bowl game. The biggest difference between those two teams were the line of scrimmage. And that's where Georgia dominated them. So, like, man, it's things that have to be asked.
Yeah, I would agree so too. And listen, Alex Atkins has been quoted saying that he actually prefers transfer portal players over high school recruits because they're more developed now. Whereas high school recruits, you're not seeing very many high school offensive linemen come in and play year one in any program. It takes 2 to 3 years to get them to be somewhere near serviceable. So I think that's part of his philosophy there. But I think if it's proven not to be working, if we're still not, the offensive line is head and shoulders beyond where they were before they got here. So we'll give them that. But to get where we need to go,
right,
we need to be developing young talent. And so, I would say to Mike, hey, if Atkins can't prove to recruit high school talent and develop it, which we've seen that not happen, then I would say, hey, listen, getting the transport guys are great, but how often are you seeing those really elite offensive linemen go in the portal?
Right.
Not very often. Why? Because you will pay out of the wazoo to keep your elite offensive linemen. So we got to start developing them. So yeah, I would say that's one that we have to look at as well.
Yeah, and I will say that, like, you look at LSU, and I think it's Will Campbell or whatever comes in like a freshman All-American at tackle. Clemson's had a few starters. I mean, even then, like, Amarius Mims got drafted from Georgia, and he wasn't even a starter. So it's just like you said, man, this is not a dish on what the job that he's doing, but it's where you want to go. If you want to be among the elite, these recruits got to start panning out. And if they can't, if you're taking an offensive lineman from Florida, God knows we love Richie Leonard. He's probably your best offensive lineman this year. But that was a bad offensive line last year. He comes in and he's your best offensive line, and you've signed how many blue chip players, and they can't play above him? It's a fair question to be asked.
Yeah.
Now, I think when you look at David Johnson, I'm not worried about that there. I think our running backs have been fine. The development's been good. You've been able to get guys like Cam Davis and all these guys. I think you're fine there. I think Tony Tokars is fine as a quarterback coach because they developed Jordan Travis. You saw what they did there. Look, I mean, you can only do so much with DJ. I hate to say that. I think 2 or 3 years down the road, we'll revisit this because you got guys like Luke and Brock and these Smeagol coming in, Trammell Jones. If none of those pan out, maybe we need to look at that too. But I think right now you're fine there. I would say, we talked about this before. Look, we love him because he's a former Seminole. Dugans is still to be determined, man. Like, he's got a good class this year. You brought in a couple of really good receivers, Elijah Moore and all that last year, and the year before that. Our receivers can't catch a daggone pass to save their life, man. And I know he's not coaching them to drop the ball, but like at some point, it's got to translate on the field. And then, I think the last position when you look at there is Thompson. And like, you brought in Landon Thomas, Jaheim Bell, who he was before he got here. You brought in Morlock, who's a 2-time D2 All-American. So he was at least decent. He's dropped 75% of his passes this year. It is what it is, man. You let Biscuit walk, who was pretty decent. I think there's a couple of positions that you need to really evaluate after the season. Like I said, man, again, let's let Atkins come back and see how good this offensive line can do. But like, you got to start asking some tough questions on this side of the ball too. And we're going to get into the defense next, which is, I think, is a little more, a little bit fiery there. But you got to ask those tough questions going into the offseason.
Yeah, you have to. With the offensive side of the ball, listen. Yes, I kind of agree about Tony Tokars as somebody you have to look at a couple to see what happens with Luke, to see what happens with Trammell Jones and with Brock as well too. But then again, I also think, man, you had Chubba Purdy, you had the guy that went to San Diego, AJ Duffy. Man, you had Milton. Now, he was on a bad leg, whatever.
Right, and you got nothing out of Tate.
You got nothing out of Tate. You had James Blackman. He was pretty much messed up from the Taggart era. So you've had QBs there. Right. The only QB that you've had success with, and this is my point. This is, if there's anything that I am kind of, like something's wrong here, is you've had all these QBs, but the only QB you've been successful with at Florida State is Jordan Travis. Now, is that because Jordan Travis was the best of the bunch of talent-wise? Maybe. That could be so. Right? For sure.
Yeah.
And Tate was your very first recruit. So you just took him because you just needed bodies. Right. And we hadn't recruited a quarterback in, I don't know,
2 years.
Eons.
Willie didn't sign a high school quarterback at all. Now, I will say, to your point, I think Dillingham was your quarterback coach originally. Now, Tokars did work with him too, but
yes, that's
a fair question, man. How come we didn't have, you're year 5, you don't have a high school quarterback ready?
So that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that it's bad. I'm just saying, man, we've had a lot of quarterbacks, and the only successful quarterback we've had so far is Jordan Travis. That's all I'm saying. I'm just putting it out there.
Right. And how come it worked at Memphis and you're getting nothing here? So like that, it's a fair question, man. Again, these are not things that we don't like the guys on the staff, but these are questions that have to be asked. And so flipping over to the defense, I think the only one to me that's safe right now is Patrick Surtain. I think he's fine. He's only been here 1 year. You had a great secondary, and he's been a great recruiter.
Yep.
You better do what you got to do to not make him to keep him here. I think when you start at the top, I think you look at Adam Fuller. I think it's time to ask a couple of questions about Adam Fuller. Now, I'm not fully in like the let's just can him, but I think he's going to have to make some tough decisions on his defensive staff at the end of the year, because sometimes I wonder, did a loaded defense full of NFL talent against some not great offenses make Adam Fuller look better than what he really is? Now, you look at when he took over in 2018, 2019, before he got here, Florida State was 90th and 66th in scoring defense. They dropped to 105th. COVID year, things happened, whatever. She also didn't play very good teams that year. 2021, they were tied for 67th in scoring defense. In the last 2 years, they put together two top 20 defenses. But again, man, in 2023, your average offense that you faced was 68th. You only faced one top 25 offense. You faced 8 first-year quarterbacks, 2 backup quarterbacks making their first start. You had injured Riley Leonard, and then his backup came in. In 2022, your average offense faced was 68th. You had 2 top 25 offenses. And then against the top 60 offenses that you faced, you gave up 31 to Wake at home, 34 to Clemson at home, 38 to Florida at home, 32 to OU in the bowl game, who was down like a 2,000-yard rusher and 2 starting offensive linemen. Every other offense was ranked 70th or below. You gave up an average of 31.6 points per game to top 60 offenses, and you had all that NFL talent. So, like, again, man, it's just you got to start asking these questions of how good is he? Like, we were talking about this before the show. If you have to have a defense that is so loaded with talent to be able to have a good defense, but you can't recruit that talent on a consistent basis, you got to look for other answers. And then, of course, I mean, I don't know why the hell Randy Shannon's here in the first place. And you went out and you made him hit your co-DC. I mean, he can't recruit, and he's failed pretty much everywhere he's been. So, like, man, it's tough. And I think if Fuller wants to save his position as DC, he's going to start having to ask some questions.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Listen, I absolutely agree that there is questions to be asked of Adam Fuller. I would also say too, as I told you in the pre-show, is that listen, no matter how great of a defensive coach you are, you might be able to scheme some things up, but if you ain't got the Jimmies and the Joes, the X's and O's don't matter, right? And so I think again, this is where Adam Fuller with NFL level talent has had some success for sure. Now, granted, those offenses haven't been the best of offenses, and when he's faced good offenses, they've struggled a little bit. But he's proven that he can coach good talent if he gets it. What he also has proven is that it's pretty crappy when they don't have talent.
Yeah.
This year, they have talent in the defensive backfield. They lack a lot of effort. They don't have talent in the running or in the linebacker. So if there's anybody on this defensive side of the ball that should be a surefire, you are being relegated to just the analyst staff or off this program. And I hate to say this, though I've said it before, but now I'm being very adamant. Randy Shannon has to go. He should not be coaching the linebackers next year, period, at all. Like
the next game.
we gave him, Jesse, we gave him the benefit of the doubt. We said, you know what? Yeah, he may not be recruiting high school as well, but man, he's been developing talent, right? Gosh, we were wrong. Tatum Bethune and Katem Deloche were just productive. I mean, you've seen the talent fall off this year. It is the Omar Graham looks worse than he did last year.
Yeah.
Why is Randy still coaching this?
Right. And even the one that you brought in, Blake Nicholson, had a lot to do with Derek Ray and his California connection. So you don't even really get a whole lot of credit for that. So, yeah, man, I think that's one position that has to be looked at like now, but maybe later at the end of the season. You got to, man. You just have to. And I mean, again, like when you talk about having a defense that's loaded, like, dude, I could probably produce a top 25 defense with Georgia's defense because they have so much talent, right? But you're not always going to have that.
Right.
You're not going to have that edge. And then if your guys can't bring in that talent that you need to be good, you got to look at replacing those two, because I'm sure Mike Norvell has the ultimate say, but I'm sure if Adam Fuller wants to make a change on his defense, that's probably his free will to do so.
Right.
And so now, Michael, when we say we got to have hard conversations.
Oh, man.
This is the one.
Dreading this one.
This is the one that no one wants to talk about. And you know what? Look. Remember when I said earlier in the show where I think we should have like an ambassador to traditions? This is the perfect person for that role. But man, listen, I know people don't want to say this. I don't want to say this. It's time. It's beyond time. You have to move on from Odell. I love Odell. He is this program. You got to move on, man. Yep. And because I don't want to get flamed, I got some things that I got to share with you guys.
Bring out the receipts.
I got to bring out the receipts so people don't come on here and say, Jesse and Michael over here talking about firing Odell. Yeah, look, well, guess what? Listen to this. The last and I'm going to get through this, so just hear me when I say this. The last quality high school defensive tackle that lived up to his rating under Odell was Eddie Goldman in 2012. So far, when you look at, we've only had one year with multiple blue chips signed since 2011. 5 out of 10 years, we've had 0, and only 1 in the last 6 cycles. We've had 2 draft picks, and one of those was a senior transfer in Braden Fisk since, I think it's since 2018 or something like that. Marvin Wilson was the other one. But let's see, here's the problem, right? So we just said that they haven't signed hardly any blue chips, right? You look at Clemson, the teams you're trying to catch. Since 2018, we've signed, I think, what did I just say, 2?
Mm-hmm.
Clemson has signed 11 since 2018. They've had 2 out of those last 7 years with multiple. They've produced 5 draft picks since 2018. Georgia, 16 blue chip defensive tackles signed since 2018. 5 out of 7 years with multiples, 4 draft picks. And even in 2018, they took 3-star Jordan Davis and made him into a first-round draft pick. Miami signed 7 since 2018. Florida signed 9 since 2018. So let's just run through this, right? Going back to the title year, because that's where things really started to kind of tail off. 2014, you signed 1 blue chip defensive tackle, Keith Bryant, red-shirted, played 1 game in 2014 versus the Citadel, 2 games in 2015, moved to reserve defensive end in 2016, played 49 total snaps, gone. 2015, Darvin Taylor, redshirt, injury, scout team, gone. 2016, Cedric Wood, 3 years, never started a game, played 359 snaps in his 3rd year. Not really an impact player or a starter. 2017, Marvin Wilson, the highest rated defensive freaking tackle in the country, commits to you. Big win on the recruiting trail. Bust, by all means. For his rating, he was a bust. Jalen Parks, never played. Corey Durden, pretty good. Not terrible, right? 3 seasons, 2 as a starter, transferred out to NC State. 2018, you brought in 1 blue chip guy, Robert Cooper. Pretty good. Not an NFL level guy. He's serviceable for you. 2019, 0. True Thompson started 1 game in 3 years, transferred to Jackson State. Malcolm Ray started 7 games in 4 years, transferred out to Rutgers. 2020, you signed 0. Emmanuel Rogers was listed on 247's database as a commit or whatever. Never played a snap at Florida State. 2021, Sean Bray Jackson, 13 snaps, transferred to UMass. Josh Farmer, still waiting to see. Still waiting to see. He's good, but he came in as a skinny linebacker. He developed him. That's pretty good. 2022, no blue chips. Daniel Lyons, to be determined, looks promising. Still, again, no blue chip sign. Ayo Tafasi, 20 snaps, transferred to Charlotte. Bishop Thomas, 6 snaps, transferred twice now. Now he's at Georgia State. 2023, 1 blue chip. KJ Sampson, to be determined, promising. 2024, none. Denas White, 3 stars, 712 nationally, 78 defensive line. 2025, you got 1 committed. You just lost another one. So again, you've signed 1 blue chip since 2018 when your last one was Robert Cooper. Even then, right, he's been covered up a lot by the transfers. So you look at the transfers. 2024, Grady Kelly, not great. 2023, Braden Fisk. When he got here, great guy, right? Great defensive tackle for you. Before he got here at Western Michigan, 59 tackles, 12 tackles for loss, 6 sacks. I get it was at Western Michigan. There's only so much you did with that because the guy was already insanely productive. You brought in Darrell Jackson, decent, highly overrated. No transfers in 2022, none in 2021. 2020, you brought in Fabian Lovett. So he had 19 tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, 1 sack at Mississippi State as a redshirt freshman. 2 full seasons without being injured at FSU. 2021 was his best season. 28 tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. 2023, 22 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 1 sack. That's not a whole lot better than what he did as a redshirt freshman at Mississippi State. You also brought in Jared Jackson. 3 years at Florida State, started 1 game, never played more than 200 snaps, transferred back out to Michigan State where he played 16 snaps on a terrible defense, and there was questions on whether he was even given full effort or not. 2019, you didn't bring in anybody. So, look, man, it's just the numbers are where they are. It's not that we don't love Odell, but like if you want to be elite, what did we just talk about? You cannot afford to be bad in the trenches. And right now you are not, you're being covered up by the transfer portal with guys that were kind of good before they got here, and you're not bringing in these elite guys. We can't reload in the trenches, which is something that Clemson does, which is something that Georgia does, which is something that even Miami is doing. Like, you got to get better. And I think right now, man, it's not on the coaching, it's more on the recruiting. The numbers are what they are, man. I love Odell, but the numbers are what they are. And then, just I'll let you share some thoughts on that. But real quick, I just want to say to finish on the defensive line, look, I love Papuchis. I think he's great as your special teams coordinator. Same thing. 2020, Josh Griffith. That turned out to be nothing. Deontay Williams, I don't even know who that is. I don't even ever think he played. He was a transfer. 2021, George Wilson, nothing. Byron Turner, serviceable guy for you. Not elite, serviceable guy. Keir Thomas, Jermaine Johnson, boom, you hit on those. Cushney was a waste of time. 2022, Aaron Hester, we've heard good things. Haven't seen him play this year yet. Jared Verse, great. 2023, Lamont Green Jr., haven't seen him play. Jaden Jones, still wondering where he is. Gilbert Edmond, transferred back to South Carolina. So, like, even in 2024, you bring in Amari Williams, who's now playing tight end, and you got Sione and Durajai. So, like, when we talk about high school, you're filling the gaps with transfers, but the high school recruiting is not there. And if you want to be elite, you got to make some changes to get some guys who can go in here and get these talented guys. You just have to. The numbers are what they are. And do you want to be 0-2 and getting – I mean, you look at this defensive line against Boston College. You got ran through over 200 yards and pushed around by Boston College's backup guard because their starter wasn't even in there. Do you want to be 0-2 or do you want to be elite? Sometimes that means tough decisions have to happen.
Yeah, listen, man.
It's hard to say, man. That's why I had all these notes, because people are going to not like that conversation.
Yeah,
but when you look at the numbers, it's just not good enough.
Yeah, no, listen, I don't disagree with you. I have felt for some time that, maybe it's time for Odell to go into more of an ambassador role. He's an incredible coach. He is Florida State, right? He, as he likes to say, he is unconquered, but the receipts don't lie, man. I mean, the stats are showing. I mean, we are not recruiting at the same level on the defensive line like we used to. I mean, Florida State was synonymous. We were DTU, man. We were getting them hogs up front. We were dominating the recruiting landscape of getting those big time players. And then we've slowly but surely degraded in every facet of the way. I mean, we took Durajai, which is a natural defensive end, and we've moved him inside as a D tackle, and he still has yet to play in any of the two games so far this season.
Same thing with Dennis Briggs.
Same thing with Dennis Briggs. Like, it's just hard to see such an incredible and amazing coaching career be diminished in such a way. And don't get me wrong. Now, listen, I give him a pass for Fabian Lovett because they used him differently. They used him as a run-stopping hole plugger. He wasn't really used necessarily as a sack artist or anything like that. So, and he was dominant. Go back and watch that Louisville game in the ACC championship. Fabian Love is one of the reasons we win that game, because he literally shut down the run game. They weren't running on him. They weren't running on Braden Fisk at all. But overall, just the results, especially as we've said already, that if you've got to have the Jimmies and Joes in order for the X's and O's to work, we're not getting the Jimmies and Joes. And the transfer, and it'd be one thing if we were getting incredible D tackles in the transfer portal, but we're not. We're not even getting that. We had. I just went back and looked. I think we had almost 7 opportunities to get high-level elite DTs in this era of in this version of the transfer portal, and we missed out on all of them.
Yeah,
all of them. Listen, Odell, man, we love you. We love you, man. You are Florida State, and we hope that if they do make a move, they find some place to keep him in the program. But man, if we want to be elite, like you said, Jesse, man, we got to go find a recruiter. Man, how about this? Move Odell to an analyst role. They can coach, so he can still develop. But let's go get a recruiter at that position. John Papuchis, let's just make him a straight special teams coordinator, and let's go get a DE coach that can recruit these outside defensive linemen. That gummit, move Randy into a analyst position, analyst at the Taco Bell, and let's go get a legit linebacker coach.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think you need to move Randy into a U-Haul into another city in another state. But no, man, I agree. It's hard. I mean, like I said, when like we talk about again, this is, do you want to be elite? That's the questions you have to ask. When you see programs like Clemson and Georgia and even Miami and Florida and these other programs that you're competing directly against, and they're signing as many blue chip defensive linemen as you are in 1 year as you are in the last 7 years, the questions have to be asked. Like, do you want to be loyal or do you want to be elite? And it is what it is. And even like we talked about with the defensive linemen or the defensive ends, do you think John Papuchis made like Jared Verse what he was, Jermaine Johnson what he was? Those guys were already good when they got here. And so, like, I mean, sure, maybe he taught him a thing here or two. But like, again, man, if you want to be great, you have to load up the trenches. Again, look at every team that wins a national championship. You win with Mac Jones as quarterback. You win with a walk-on at quarterback. It wasn't, I mean, I think Stetson Bennett was better than people gave him credit for, but it wasn't necessarily because of him. It's because you got NFL guys in the trenches, and that is something that we do not have on either side of the ball right now. And so these questions, while they're difficult, they are things that have to be assessed at the end of the year, because if Florida State wants to be competitive in the ACC, fine. Give these guys a raise, give them an extension, fine. But then don't complain when we're 0-2 and we're getting pushed around by Boston College and Georgia freaking Tech. I guarantee you who's probably not going to get pushed around by them, and that's teams that are loaded in the trenches. So, like, man, again, if you want to be great, you have to reevaluate where you're at the end of the season. And we want to be great. That's why we're pissed off right now. That's why we're even bringing this up. I'd much rather be talking about being 2-0 and focusing on Memphis, and even then, like you look at 2025, this was going to be a renaissance year. I thought this was a renaissance year for Odell. You had 2 blue chips committed. You just lost one. There's no guarantee you're going to keep the other one. So again, man, it's tough. It's tough. I don't want to say this either. Like you said, move him, you got to find an off the field role for him, but it's hard, man. But when you look at the receipts, you look at the history, the recruiting is not there. And frankly, the development has not been there either. And it is what it is. Your best defensive tackles have been transfers that were productive at the school they came from.
That's right. That's right. I mean, and at the end of the day, man, all we want is what's best for Florida State. That's all we care about. I mean, we just want to win.
Yeah.
That's it. We don't care how you get the dub. Just get it.
Just go get it.
And right now, it just seems like we understand what we had to do to get here. We understand we had to rely heavily on the transfer portal. We had to rely heavily on these players that weren't like great high school recruits. And we had to take what we were getting in high school recruiting. But as we've gotten better, so has the recruiting in some regard, but not where it should be. And so I think it's time, Mike. I think it's time that you do an assessment of the staff and say, okay, this staff was able to get us here, and that was awesome. But this staff can't get us there. Right. And so I got to go get the staff that can get us there.
Right. I think that's a perfect way to look at it as we go to wrap this episode up. I mean, again, like we said, I laid out the numbers for you earlier. You look at all these teams that have won national titles over the last 11 years, when you even include Florida State in that. The recruiting has to be consistently top 10, and you have to be stacked in the trenches. Even the Michigans, the Georgias, all those teams were stacked in the trenches, and that's somewhere that you're lacking. So, like, man, it's tough to ask these questions, but like you said, they got us here. That's great. But can they get you to that next level where Florida State wants to be? And the answer right now is no. And so you have to just ask those tough questions and be willing to make the changes that are possible. And again, for those of you that watch this, I want to make sure we understand that this is out of a place of love for this program. We want Florida State to be good. It's not that we don't like any of these guys or we're saying they're bad people, or they punch kittens or anything like that. We're not saying anything like that. We're just saying that in the game of football, wins and losses are above all else. And to get there, sometimes that means tough decisions. So
that's right.
With that being said, guys, we're going to go ahead and put a bow on this one here. Man, hopefully we have something more positive to talk about coming up. Hopefully they can actually bounce back and get a win against Memphis coming up. We'll see, but we'll be back with you guys next week to preview that game. Hopefully we've done some things in the bye week to rebound from this, because nothing would cure this heartache like coming out and stacking a couple of wins. So Michael, it's crazy that we're here after just 2 losses, but man, it's how those 2 losses have looked that have got us here. And so I think when you do that and you start digging, I've been so positive about this stuff, but when you start digging, you start to see some of the problems that are like, okay, maybe this got covered up by this. Maybe this got covered up by that. Maybe if we want to be the Georgias, Alabamas, and Ohio States, we don't want to be Ohio State. They can't win anything with all that talent. But if you want to be like those programs, you got to start doing the things that they're doing. So with that being said, guys, we appreciate you tuning in. Make sure you go check out Alumni Hall FSU, because let me tell you what, their gear is elite. There is no question about that. Make sure you use code SPEAR to get 10% off. Guys, love you, mean it. We don't want to be negative, but we got to be real. And so, I don't know if Mike Norvell's listening to this. Sorry, bro. We don't mean to be harsh, but I hope you are listening to it, because look, man, you got to start asking those questions. So thanks for tuning in, guys. And again, hopefully we can be more positive on the next one, but sometimes the tough questions just got to be asked. And I guess we got to be the ones to do it. So until next time, guys, thanks for watching. And as always, go Noles.